monstera, and there's a lake here now, so I thought, what a great reading spot. I also got some hot chocolate, because who doesn't love hot chocolate on a cloudy day? Okay, so I hope you can hear me. We are going to be reading No Bad Parts by Richard C. Schwartz, PhD, Healing Trauma and Restoring Wholeness with the Internal Family Systems Model. And we're on chapter 2, Why Parts Blend. In IFS, we use the term blended to describe the phenomenon in which a part merges its perspective, emotion, beliefs, and impulses with yourself. When that happens, the qualities of yourself are obscured and seem to be replaced by those of the part. You might feel overwhelmed with fear, anger, or apathy. You might dissociate or become confused or have cravings. In other words, at least temporarily, you become the part that has blended with you. You are the fearful young girl or the pouting little boy you once were. Why do parts blend? Protective parts blend because they believe they have to manage situations in your life. They don't trust yourself to do it. For example, if your father hit you as a child and you weren't able to stop him, your parts lost trust in yourself's ability to protect the system and instead came to believe they have to do it. To make the parallel to external families, they become parentified in our children. That is, they carry the responsibility for protecting you despite the fact that, like external parentified children, they are not equipped to do so. Parts often become extreme in their protective efforts and take over your system by blending. Some make you hypervigilant, others get you to overreact angrily to perceived slights. Others make you somewhat dissociative all the time or cause you to fully dissociate in the face of perceived threats. Some become the inner critics as they try to motivate you to look or perform better or try to shame you into not taking risks. Others make you take care of everyone around you and neglect yourself. The list of common protector roles in traumatized systems could go on and on. The point here is that these symptoms, and patterns are the activities of young, stressed out parts that are often frozen in time during earlier traumas and believe that you are still quite young and powerless. They often believe that they must blend the way they do or something dreadful will happen, often that you will die. Given where they are stuck in the past, it makes sense that they would believe this. Some of us are blended with some parts most of the time, and we are so used to it that we don't even think the beliefs we consequently hold are extreme. Let me read that. Some of us are blended with some parts most of the time, and we are so used to it that we don't even think the beliefs we consequently hold are extreme. We just have a background sense that we are a fraud, that we shouldn't fully trust anyone, or that we have to work constantly to avoid becoming impoverished. We may not even be consciously aware of such beliefs, yet those burdens govern our lives and are never examined or questioned. Other parts only blend when they are triggered. Someone rejects us, and suddenly we are awash in shame. A driver cuts us off, and we're flooded with rage. We have to prepare for a presentation, and we have a panic attack. We know that there are overreactions, but we have no real idea as to why we get so upset. And because we never ask inside, we just go around thinking of ourselves as touchy, angry, or anxious people. It's important to remember that regardless of how blended we are, the self is still in there. It never goes away. In ancient times, when there was a solar eclipse and it suddenly got dark because the moon blocked the sun, people would panic, believing the sun had disappeared. Like the sun, the self can be temporarily obscured, but it never disappears. When the moon passes by or clouds dissipate, the sun shines as brightly as ever. Similarly, when parts unblend, the self's nourishing energy is readily available again, and the parts are comforted to sense the presence of such a strong, loving inner leader. Blended parts give us the projections, transferences, and other twisted views that are the bread and butter of psychotherapy. The self's view is unfiltered by those distortions. When you're in self, we see the pain that drives our enemies rather than only seeing their protective parts. Your protectors only see the protectors of others. The clarity of self gives you a kind of X-ray vision, so you can see behind the other person's protectors to their vulnerability, and in turn your heart opens to them. Self also senses the self in everyone, and consequently has a deep sense of connectedness, as well as a strong desire to connect to the self of others. This sense of connectedness has a spiritual element to it that we'll explore later in this book. We feel connected to spirit, the Tao, Tao, God, Brahman, to the big self. We feel it because we are connected to it. When we blend with burdened parts, we lose all sense of this connectedness and feel separate from one another and from spirit, alone and lonely. Here is another parallel between inner and outer systems. After they are burdened, our parts feel lonely and disconnected from one another and from ourselves. They don't realize they are all affected by what happens to each other and are loved by self. Neither do we. Thus, finding blended parts and helping them trust that it's safe to unblend is a crucial part of IFS. As you might have discovered in the mapping exercise, the simple act of noticing parts and representing them on a page often creates enough separation from them, enough unblending, that you can have a different perspective on them. Like the view of a city from 30,000 feet, you can see more clearly the roles that they take on and how they operate as a system. Once you're out of the trees, you can see the forest. Sorry for the jet noise, it's almost the 4th of July, so we have military Air Force jets zooming through the country. Not my fave. Thus, finding blended parts and helping them trust that it's safe to unblend is a crucial part of IFS. As you might have discovered in the mapping exercise, the simple act of noticing parts and representing them on a page often creates enough separation from them, enough unblending, that you can have a different perspective on them. Like the view of a city from 30,000 feet, you can see more clearly the roles they take on and how they operate as a system. Once you're out of the trees, you can see the forest. Not only can you see them better, but it is easier to care about each of them when you are above rather than in the middle of their crossfires. When you unblend enough from the parts that hate your fear, for example, you suddenly see that it's not a bundle of irrational neuroses, but a frightened little childlike part who needs to be comforted. You have compassion for the little guy and want to hold rather than scold him. You find that holding parts actually works. You're no longer plagued by fear. Many spiritual traditions stress the importance of loving, or at least having compassion for yourself. IFS tells you precisely how to do that. For example, Kristen Neff and Chris Germer have brought a large and wonderful movement to the public called Mindful Self-Compassion, based on some Buddhist practices that are quite compatible with IFS. IFS makes such practices a little more concrete by helping you extend care and nurturance to specific parts that are suffering or are former enemies, and you can notice how they react. Also, whereas some traditions teach that you have to build up the muscle of compassion with specific practices, with IFS, the self is already buff with compassion. It merely needs to be released, not strengthened. Daily practices can be useful in helping parts trust that it's safe to release compassion, and that can be expedited by getting to know and addressing their fears about doing so. In fact, most meditations can be seen as unblending practices. Whether you mindfully separate from thoughts and emotions by noticing them from a place of calm acceptance, or by repeating a mantra and that puts them to sleep, you are accessing the self. As those meditations help you have more calm, confidence, clarity, compassion, courage, creativity, curiosity, and connectedness in your life, more of the 8 C's in a little bit, your parts come to trust yourself more to lead inside and out. IFS offers a particular approach to meditation that can be experienced, that you can experience in the next exercise. Exercise: unblending and embodying. This is a brief meditation that I do a version of each day, as do many people who follow the IFS path. I encourage you to try it out as a daily practice. Get comfortable, and if it helps, take deep breaths. Then start by focusing on and checking in with whatever parts you are actively working with. Okay, let's do it. To do that, see if you can find each of them in or around your body and get curious about how they're doing. That is, ask each if there's anything it wants you to know or if it needs anything, like you might with a child that's in your care. As you're getting to know it, at some point, help it get to know you better, the you that's with you now, that's with it now. Since most of the time these parts don't really know you. Instead, they've been interacting with other parts in there, and they often believe that you're still a young child. Often, this is their first encounter with you, the you who's curious about them and cares about them. So let them know who you are, even how old you are, since they often think you're much younger. Let them know that you're not alone anymore, and see how they react. You can ask if you like how old they thought you were. You can even ask them to turn around and look at you. After you've checked in with these parts you've begun working with, you can open space and invite any other parts that need attention to come forward, and just wait to see what trailheads, thoughts, emotions, sensations, impulses emerge. In a similar way, get to know these new ones and help them get to know you. This next piece is optional and may or may not happen. Revisit each of them one at a time and invite them to relax and open space inside so you can be more in your body. If a part's willing to do that, you'll notice a palpable shift in your body or your mind toward more spaciousness and peace in that place where the part seems to reside. If that doesn't happen, don't despair, as they may not know you well enough yet to trust that it's safe to do that, and that's fine. If they do separate, notice that more embodied, spacious sense of who you are and the qualities you feel when you're in that place. What's it like in your body and mind now? Notice that spaciousness, the sense of well-being and enoughness, that you are enough. Also notice the feeling like there's nothing to do right now and everything is okay. Some people spontaneously feel vibrating energy running through their body, making their fingers and toes tingle. This is what some people call chi, chi or kundalini or prana, but in IFS we call it self-energy. I'm inviting you to get a felt sense of what it's like for you, yourself, to be more embodied. If you can become somatically familiar with this state, then you can notice when you're there and when you're not as you go through your day. Any departures from that state are usually due to the activity of parts that have blended to some degree and are giving you distracting thoughts, blocking the flow of energy, closing your heart, making you feel pressure in different places, etc. You can notice these activities and then reassure the parts doing them that they don't have to, that it's safe to unblend, at least for the duration of the meditation. Afterward, they can jump back to attention if they really want to. I have found, however, that through this practice, parts gradually increase their trust that it is safe and beneficial to let the self embody. They also trust that the self is remembering and checking in on them, that it's being a good inner parent. All of this self-leadership helps them step out of their parentified roles and consider unburdening. In the next minute or so, I invite you to shift your focus back outside. Before you come back though, thank your parts either for letting you embody more or, if they didn't, for letting you know they were too afraid to do so just yet. Then come on back when it feels right. The 4 basic goals of IFS. Liberate parts. 1. Liberate parts from the roles they've been forced into so they can be who they're designed to be. 2. Restore trust in the self and self-leadership. 3. Reharmonize the inner parts. 4. Become more self-led in your interactions with the world. This kind of unblending doesn't have to be limited to 20-minute sessions. It can become a life practice. So as I go through my day, I notice how much I'm in my body, how much of myself is present. I'll check my heart to see how open it is, feel whether my mind is also open or if I have a strong agenda or pressured thoughts. Gauge the resonance of my voice when I talk, feel whether or not that vibrating self-energy is flowing, examine whether there is a physical tension in my forehead or weight on my shoulders, which is where my managers hang out, etc. These are some of my markers, and I encourage you to find your own. After practicing many years, I can check those markers quickly and then ask any activated parts to relax, separate, and trust me to embody. Because my parts trust me now, most of the time, I'll quickly notice changes in those qualities and places in my body. There are a few circumstances where that is still a challenge, but that simply means that I still need to heal some parts that get triggered by those situations. When you can be present with your parts in the inner world this way, you can lead more of your life in the outer world from this place. In this meditation, I had you tell your parts how old you really are. When I have people ask that question, i.e., how old do you think I am? Maybe 70% of the time, the answer is in single digits. Often the number that comes back to you is the age you were when the part was forced out of its valuable state and into the role that it's in now. It's like once the part took on that role, it focused on the outside world and never looked back at you. It didn't notice that you grew. So many parts believe they're still protecting you as a young child. In many cases, how old you are now is a big revelation to these parts. Many don't believe it at first. The goal of this updating process is for your parts to realize that they aren't the Lone Rangers they thought they were in there. Instead, as they come to trust you, yourself, as the inner leader, they are greatly relieved and can become who they are designed to be. They may grow a bit older or younger or stay the same, but universally they transform into valuable roles. More about parts. Before we go any deeper into this work, I want to make sure I'm clear about what I'm calling parts. As I discussed earlier, parts are typically mistaken for the extreme roles they're in. As a consequence, we just end up fighting, shunning, and disparaging them. There is a parallel with other people here. After being traumatized or repeatedly humiliated, people often behave in extreme ways. They have addictions, rage, or panic attacks, become narcissistic or obsessed. Our culture and psychiatric establishment usually respond to this with pathologizing and monolithic diagnoses. However, through the heroic efforts of Bessel van der Kolk and others, like Gabor Mate in the field of addictions, this tendency has begun to change. And we can see those extremes as the product of their traumatic or neglectful histories from which they can be released. As I'll note repeatedly, neither parts nor people are inherently flawed or destructive. We all have these parts, and they're all valuable until they become burdened and are forced into distorted roles by what happened early in our life. IFS begins a process that allows them to totally transform back into their naturally valuable states. When that happens, not only does the part come out of its extreme role, but you now have access to its qualities and resources that you couldn't connect with before. It turns out that parts aren't afflictions and they aren't the ego. They're little inner beings who are trying their best to keep you safe and to keep each other safe and to keep it together in there. They have full range personalities. Each of them have different desires, different ages, different opinions, different talents, and different resources. Instead of just being annoyances or afflictions, which they can be while in their extreme roles, they are wonderful inner beings. It's the natural state of the mind to have parts. They are not the product of trauma or of internalizing external voices or energies. It's just the way we're built. And that's good because all of our parts have valuable qualities and resources to give to us. Thus, the angry part isn't a bundle of anger. If you listen to it with an open mind, you'll hear it has a lot to be angry about, but it also has fear and sadness, and is just trying its best to keep you safe by being angry. Remember that parts have different desires, ages, emotions, and opinions, so they're like little inner people, and because most are quite young, they're more like inner children. When you were young and experienced traumas or attachment injuries, you didn't have enough body or mind to protect yourself. Yourself couldn't protect your parts, so your parts lost trust in yourself as the inner leader. They may even have pushed yourself out of your body and took the hit themselves. They believed they had to take over and protect you and your other parts. But in trying to handle the emergency, they got stuck in that parentified place and carry intense burdens of responsibility and fear like a parentified child in a family. That's why it really helps them to realize that you're not that young age anymore. They stay stuck, however, not because they're not sure how old you are, but because they live in the past, frozen in time in the traumas that you experienced. That's why they still think they have to protect other parts who were hurt by those experiences too, and are carrying the burdens, the extreme beliefs and emotions from those times. They feel alone with all that pressure and terror. The simple act of turning your focus inside and beginning to listen and talk to them and let them know they aren't alone, because you are there to care for them, is quite radical and so welcome to that inner orphanage. 5 things to know about parts. 1. Parts are innate. Infant researchers like T. Barry Brazelton report that infants rotate through 5 or 6 states, one after the other. Maybe those are the parts that are online when you're born, and the others are dormant until the proper time in your development when they are needed and they kind of pop out. For example, for those of you who have kids might remember that evening when you put a compliant little 2-year-old to bed and the same child woke up saying no to virtually everything the next morning. That assertive part debuted overnight. So it's the natural state of the mind to have parts. Number 2, there aren't any bad ones. As you get to know them, you'll learn their full range of personalities. Most are young, even the ones that dominate your life, and can be quite intellectual. After parts unburden, they will manifest their true nature and valuable qualities like delight, joy, sensitivity, empathy, wonderment, sexuality, and resources like the ability to focus, clear discernment, problem solving, passion for serving others in the world that you have new access to and enrich your life. Number 3, you often have to earn their trust. The fact that they are burdened suggests that you didn't protect them in the past, and you may have locked them away or exploited them by depending on their extreme protective roles, so they usually have good reasons to not trust you. Like feral children, they need your love and nurturing, but they don't trust it at first because of their history with you. Sometimes it takes you showing up in self repeatedly and apologizing to them to regain their trust. Fortunately, they aren't actually feral external children, so this trusting process often doesn't take more than a few visits. Number 4, they can cause a lot of damage to your body and your life. Because they're frozen in dreadful scenes in the past and carry burdens from those times, they will do whatever they need to do to get your attention when you won't listen, punish you or others, convince others to take care of them, sabotage your plans, or eliminate people in your life when they see a threat. To do these things and more, they can exacerbate or give you physical symptoms or diseases, nightmares or strange dreams, emotional outbursts, and chronic emotional states. Indeed, most of the syndromes that make up the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual are simply descriptions of the different clusters of protectors that dominate people after they've been traumatized. When you think of those diagnoses that way, you feel a lot less defective and a lot more empowered to help these protectors out of those roles. Number 5, they are very important and deserve to be taken seriously. If you can establish a new loving relationship with them and help them transform, they become wonderful companions, advisors, and playmates. You find yourself wanting to spend time with them and hear what ideas they have for you. Their conflicts don't bother you much anymore because you know they're just parts and you can help them get along. You become a good inner parent when necessary, and it becomes a lovely life practice just to spend time with them. Session 1, Sam. I've included several transcripts of IFS sessions with clients in this book so you can get a better feel of how the work I'm describing plays out in real time. If it isn't clear, I'm the transcribed party referred to as Dick, or just D. I teach every year at a beautiful retreat center near Big Sur, California called Esalen. This past winter, Sam Stern, who was running their podcast at the time, asked me to do an interview with him, and he gamely agreed to let me demonstrate IFS on him. It was his first experience of IFS. If you'd like to listen to the interview, check out soundcloud.com/voicesofessalon/Dr. Richard Schwartz, Internal Family Systems. Let's see, how am I going to do this? I think I'll go like this for Dick and like this for Sam, okay? Dick. So what would you like to work on? Sam. Well, you have this piece in your work about a trailhead taking note of an area that might be juicy or interesting to work with. I got bullied when I was in 8th grade, and the way I experienced it was that it was bad. Yeah, I took it inside. It felt like a shutdown, like it shut down some pieces of me. Beautiful. So do you want to focus on the pain of that, or the shame, or do you want to focus on the part that shut you down? That one, the shut down one. So go ahead and find the part of you that's shut down and see if you can find it in your body, around your body. What am I looking for, Dick? A numbing part, maybe? There's a way to do it. As you think about going to that 13-year-old boy in there, what comes up in terms of fear? I don't feel fear. I can see that boy, and he's soft or weak, and I don't feel connected to him. How do you feel toward him as you see him there? I don't want to be with him. Okay, so focus on that feeling like you don't want to be with him, and ask that part what it's afraid would happen if it let you be with him. It looks to me like he's scared and he's going to get physically beat. Yeah, almost like maybe afraid of me. Okay, but how are you feeling toward him? I want him to toughen up. He should just lash out and defend himself. Right. Tell that part we understand why he'd want that, but we're going to ask him to give us the space to try and help this boy a different way and see if he'd be willing to step back and relax in there a little bit. Do I actually say something to him? You don't have to say it out loud, just inside, and see if you can sense that part receding or relaxing. Yes, that angry lashing out part would be willing to step back. As it does, how do you feel toward the boy now? A bit closer, like my brother. Yeah, good. Okay, so let him know that you're there to help, and see how he reacts to that news. Yeah, he feels good, almost like he's more filled with life and he's kind of peppy and cool. That's great, yeah. Okay, so ask him what he wants you to know about himself and just wait for the answer to come. I'm getting that he wants to be on the baseball team. Now it's like we're friends. Yeah, he's opening up, and it's like we could have a really fun time if he's left over. That's nice. Okay, Sam, then go ahead and ask him to really let you get a sense of what happened to him to make him feel bullied. Just wait for whatever he wants to give you in the way of emotions, sensations, or images. He's saying that he was surprised. He was betrayed. He thought it was all cool between him and the guy, like they were on the same side, and then all of a sudden he's calling to say he's going to beat the shit out of him. Okay, does that make sense to you, Sam? That would feel terrible? Sure. Yeah, so let him know that you get that and whatever else he wants to give you and what it was like for him. I've done so much thinking about this, and I'm having trouble separating out my assumptions around it from my memories of it. Yeah, so we're going to ask the thinking part, the narrating part, to give us some space too, just like we did the others, and see if that's possible. See if the thinking part would step out too. Okay, it did. Then go ahead and ask the 13-year-old again to really let you know what happened and how bad it was. Just the rejection. I feel like I was there and then I pulled back from it. Yeah, so find the part that pulled you back. He's afraid I'll feel too much. It'll be embarrassing. I'll judge myself. Is he afraid of that original tough guy? He would beat you up for having cried? Sam agrees. So we don't have to keep going if that's too scary, but let's ask the tough guy to go into a contained room in there for a while. Just tell him we'll talk to him afterward and let him out. He gets that. Okay, so now see if the part who came in to pull you away can let us go back. I promise if they really let you go all the way with this, we can heal the bully guy so he's no longer stuck back there. He'll no longer feel bad, and then they won't have to worry about him. They just need to give us the space. Well, the tough guy says he'll stay in the room, says he's ready. He's going to give us the space. Okay, that's great. See if you can get back to the boy. I don't feel like I'm with the boy. So there's another part in the way. Just ask whoever is blocking what they're afraid would happen now if they let you be with him. Not getting anything, getting more like an empty space. All right, so let me talk to the part directly. Okay, so you there? Are you willing to talk to me? Yes. I just love this. I witnessed this happen in my own work, and it's so funny that our brains work this way where he has no access to this, and yet someone else can be like, can I chat with you? And the part is like, yeah, sure, I'm here. Yes. Okay, so you're the part of Sam that's blocking him from being with the boy now, is that right? Yes. And what are you afraid would happen if you let him go back to the boy and feel some of that? Connecting to that weak boy would soften up the whole person. And what would happen then if Sam was softer? I'd have to change this whole person that I spent so much time constructing. I run a tight ship, is what I'm trying to say. Everything works the way I do it. I got it. All right. Well, we don't want to screw everything up for you. On the other hand, I think some of why you have to keep the ship so tight, of how hard you have to work, is probably because this boy is in there and you're trying to keep Sam away from him. That's true. And what I'm offering is the possibility of not having to work so hard because the boy is going to be feeling good. Okay, but if I wasn't there, then how am I going to help Sam achieve, do everything? I get that, so we won't do it without your permission, but if you're willing, I promise we can do what I just said, and you'll be freed up to do something else. Yeah, well, if it'll ultimately be better for Sam, I'm into it. Yeah, all right, that's great. So if you don't mind going into the waiting room, just till we're done, and let me talk to Sam again. Sam, see if you can get close to the boy now. Yes, I feel close to him. Good. Let him know you're back and you're sorry that you let these parts pull you away, and tell him you're ready to know the rest of it, everything he wants you to get about how bad it was. Yeah, he feels really small, younger than 13, way younger, maybe like a 2-year-old. Okay, how do you feel toward the 2-year-old? Tender. Nice. So let that part know too that you're with him and you care about him, and just see what he wants you to know. I'm feeling a lot of love right now. I feel like my heart is opening, and yeah, I'm feeling love toward the 13-year-old too, like a tenderness, like a father. Yeah, so let them both know. It feels good. It feels really, really sweet. Yeah, we can just stay with this for a while if you want, but also be open if there's something they want you to know. I feel the 13-year-old me. I see him, and he's dressed in sort of the awkward clothes of a 7th or 8th grade boy. Feeling that he's not pubescent or developed enough. His clothes don't look right, and he couldn't defend himself right. That like his bones feel brittle. I don't feel disgusted by him, I'm empathizing now. Let him know and see if there's more he wants you to get about all of that. He wants to be funny and popular, and it hurt a lot. Being bullied and smacked down, that idea of being popular. Being bullied smacked down that idea of being popular. Really shut him down. Yeah, and I'm thinking about how later when I developed, when I was 19 and in college, and I figured out a way to be cool, how important that was to me. Of course, just tell him you're getting all of this and see if there's more he wants you to get. Yeah, there's no mean-spiritedness to him. He's not angry. He's more just don't hurt me, but still kind of optimistic. Good, but ask him if it does feel like you now get how much it did hurt, or if there's more of that he wants you to get. Yeah, I'm accessing a more dark nights of the soul type of feeling from him and the terror. Let him know you're good with that. You really want to feel it as much as he wants you to. Does he feel like you really get how scared he was now? He says he does. Good. So Sam, I want you to go into that time period and be with him in the way he needed somebody then, and just tell me when you're in there with him. I'm there. I'm letting him know I'm a friend, a protector. Great. How is he reacting? He feels good. He has somebody on his team. That's right. Ask him if there's anything he wants you to do for him back there. He wants me to bring him into adulthood where you can have sex and do grown-up things. He's always been interested in being in that realm. Okay, we're going to do that, but first, does he want you to do anything with the bully or anything else back there before we take him out? No, he doesn't seem vindictive. It doesn't seem like he wants anybody beat up. All right, so let's take him wherever he wants to go. Could be the present, could be a fantasy place, wherever he wants. He wants to be a Burning Man. Oh, great, okay. How's he like it there? Little shy. Let him know that you're going to help him learn the ropes there. And tell him he never has to go back to that bullying time again. Sam cries hard with relief. Yeah, there's all that relief, right? That's great. Yeah, he never has to go back there. That's really great, Sam. Amazing, man. It's like tears of joy. That's really great. And he never has to go back. And you're going to be taking care of him now. It's so great. It's like what he's always wanted. You can't see through my own tears of joy. It's very sweet. But I want to read. Okay. It's so great. It's like what he's always wanted. There you go. And ask now if he's ready to unload the feelings and beliefs he got back there that he's been carrying around all this time. Ask where he carries all that in his body or around his body, throughout his body. Around his head, around his hips and heart. Okay, ask what he wants to give it all up to. Light, water, fire, wind, earth, or anything. Light. All right, Sam, so bring some light in and have it shine on him. And tell him to let all of that go out of his body, off his body. Just let the light take it away. No need to carry that anymore. Have him check his body, make sure he gets all of it out. Yeah, just let it go into the light. That's right. Tell him now to invite qualities into his body that he wants and just see what comes into him now. Like a pride and kindness to others. Just like a good superhero type of feel. Great, so how does he seem now? Like my younger friend, but safe, and strong. That's right, so let's let all these guys out of the waiting room and have them come in and see him now and see how they react. Let them know they don't have to protect him or they don't have to keep you away from him anymore, so they can start thinking about new roles. I see curiosity and befuddlement on the tough guy's face. He's totally confused that he's not me. No, he's not you. Make that clear to him. He was beating up that kid, which wasn't good, so, right. He needs to think about a new role now. Ask him what he'd like to do if he really trusted he didn't have to protect you like he used to. Well, he's saying he's so good at everything. Can he just choose? He's really, really high on himself, really. He sees everything that's good that I've done in my life he's taken credit for. Yeah. He can think of a new role. He doesn't have to decide right now. So how's it feeling in there now? It's feeling spacious. It's feeling interesting and different. Yeah, okay. So does it feel complete for now? It does, and I'm interested to know how I can get in touch with this tough guy to let him know that although he is not in control of the show, he's still important to me. That's exactly what you gotta tell him. You don't have to work to get in touch with him. He's around all the time. Just focus on him and talk to him about it. So come on back. It's a beautiful piece of work, Sam. Yeah, thank you. I was not expecting that. I wanted to include this session because it illustrates many of the basics of IFS. For example, I repeatedly asked different protectors to open space until Sam's self emerges, and he spontaneously says he feels closer to the 13-year-old exile. Then he witnesses how the boy was bullied and gets the parts that try to interfere with the witnessing to step out so it can be completed. Then I have him go to the 13-year-old in the past and bring him to a safe place, Burning Man. And the boy is then willing to unburden the emotions he got from the bullying. The boy unburdens and transforms them, and finally we bring in his most dominant protector, the tough guy, to see that the boy doesn't really need his protection and he can consider a new role. Throughout his parts increasingly come to trust in Sam's leadership. We went from unblending parts and releasing self to witnessing, retrieving, and unburdening an exile, and then to helping a protector consider a new role. In addition, there was a point where I talked directly to a protector, a practice we call direct access. While many of Sam's protectors interfered at different parts, they quickly were willing to open space once he and I reassured them. This isn't true for most people. It takes longer for their protectors to trust them and me, so don't be frustrated if your sessions don't move as quickly. I also wanted to include this session because it's a great example of how many boys, myself included, are forced to handle their wounds and consequently become dominated by tough guy parts that disdain vulnerability in themselves and others. Sam was hardly a macho guy. He does a podcast for SLM, for God's sake. Yet that early bullying experience and his response to it had a significant impact on his life. As a postscript, I want to include a message Sam sent me about 6 months after the session. Personally, this is the message. Personally, it was an extraordinary breakthrough for me. I've done a lot of thinking and feeling about that part of me. The small boy inside of me is feeling a lot of healing and a lot of acceptance. I've done a lot of thinking about the tough guy and realized how deeply married I've been to him. I haven't separated from him, so to speak, but I'm so much more conscious of his presence and my reliance on him after having apprehended through your work the way I've organized myself. I am curious about how he might function as a creative, as a helper to others, once I continue to release him from his duties as the man. I know, of course, that I have more work to do, and being a dad makes me want to do that. Whew, that was a big chapter. Okay, we are on to chapter 3. We're on page 49. This has been No Bad Parts by Dr. Richard Schwartz, and I will see you again for the next chapter soon. Bye.